Greetings, peoples of the interwebs. Jake here. Reverend Spaceman just unleashed his light swords.
Yep.
His lightsaber, because this is, in case you can't tell by the title that I'll end up giving this, is a debate.
Not an innuendo. He does have a lightsaber.
He does.
I'd like to point that out.
Yeah.
Since we only have audio.
Yeah.
But this is perhaps our biggest debate yet, where fighting on the side of Star Wars is Reverend Spaceman and Jordan.
I'm Reverend Spaceman.
He is.
I'm not Dave.
He is not Dave.
No, he's not.
And then fighting for the side of Lord of the Rings is me, your host, and my co-host Dave, who's not Jordan.
No, not.
And then judging this fine, epic
thing.
debate is our good friend Phil from Filmbeef.
Yeah, Phil.
Glad to be back again.
Yes.
Yeah.
As an honorary member of Pasty Pale Productions.
So, I'll go ahead and plug my stuff.
Yeah.
I'll get that out of the way first before we get to this bloodbath. So, you can find the Filmbeef podcast and Death DVR. Those are the two podcasts I'm a part of on iTunes, Stitcher, any podcasting app, and YouTube. There's also a YouTube channel just titled Filmbeef, which you can search and find the logo. It's red, blue, white with a cow.
They're on our featured channels list, so you can check it out that way.
Always enjoyed that logo.
I'm not really a part of the YouTube channel, but check it out anyway.
Good stuff.
Our most recent film review, of course, on Filmbeef was Black Mass with Johnny Depp. Death DVR, we covered True Detective Season 2, Mr. Robot Season 1, Fear the Walking Dead Season 1, and now we're about to start The Leftovers Season 2 on Sunday.
Alrighty.
So, lots to check out.
Yeah,
So,
a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
But before we get into this debate, I should probably elaborate to you viewers. This debate is based on our arguments alone, and our good friend Phil will be the judge of who came up with the better argument, because this is the film franchise, not the expanded stuff like the Silmarillion, not the expanded universe books or comics or anything. This is just the movies. And so that's Star Wars 1 through 6.
Not
and
the
also
original books yours are based on, just the movies.
the movies.
Yep.
So if your film of choice loses, blame Phil is what. That's what you're trying to say, right?
I should mention that I love both of the franchises.
I think we all do.
Own them both on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Except for a couple from each side. You know which ones
We don't,
already.
we don't need to go into detail.
Yeah.
So I'm biased both ways. So
Yeah.
I'm, I guess, by default, impartial. So
Yeah.
we go.
And again, this is a very hard debate, but we were like, we need to do it.
Yeah.
Because...
It's kind of a divide we
need
actually
viewers.
have.
Content.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically, Lord of the Rings trilogy and Hobbit trilogy versus Star Wars 1 through 6. And...
So, Star Wars came first in time, so you guys get to go first. Go ahead.
Great.
Start off space.
Alright, well, Star Wars
Long
is
time ago in a
a long
galaxy
time
far away.
ago in England when George Lucas was filming it. Star Wars is, the movie
And
franchise
Tunisia.
came for, yeah.
Are you helping him?
In LA. For
I'm pointing
for
out that you
extra
clearly don't know
cantina
your
scenes.
stuff.
Thank you, Jake.
Both film franchises were filmed at various parts all over the world. All right, continue.
Star Wars is a franchise that has inspired many people who've gone into filmmaking, acting, special effects just because of Star Wars. It's also not an adaptation. It came entirely into George Lucas's mind after, a bunch of Flash Gordon stuff.
It only took 4 years for Star Wars to get on the big screen, whereas Lord of the Rings took, 70-something years here.
No, there was an animated adaptation.
Yeah.
There was.
So the limits of technology and whatnot.
And if I may...
They still could.
Okay, technically they could have made it,
Could have,
but, I mean, the technology just wasn't there, and, there was a whole thing about the rights, which, speaking of... George Lucas apparently was actually trying to get the rights to Lord of the Rings for a very long time before Star Wars.
But he made Star Wars and it was better.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't get the rights to
to start. Yeah,
Actually, that was Flash Gordon. He was trying to get the rights
and
to Flash Gordon.
Flash Gordon as well,
Couldn't
but
get that.
both.
Basically,
before.
he couldn't get the rights
But
to
faced with-
anything else.
But faced with both of
So
those
he was
adversities, he made his own
just sort
thing
of rip off
completely
the
out
other
of his
two.
mind.
Yeah.
No, we can't fault him for originality. We gotta.
No, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm
You're
just
the judge, so.
That's a good thing to have.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's the fact that he was so passionate about trying to get the rights to the Lord of the Rings because the books have been around for so long.
I've heard Flash
Passionate?
Gordon.
Even he's a fan.
We're using the word passionate here?
Well, yeah, he
If
kept
he was
trying
that
to get.
passionate, he would have had
He
it
kept
made.
trying to get the rights because Tolkien sold the rights in 1969, and there's a bunch of people who tried to get the rights of it, like the Beatles, of all people.
That
wanted
would have
to-
been great.
in a completely different
No, it would have been a
reasons.
Kubrick movie. It would have been
George's
just great by default.
Aragorn.
Yeah,
But,
would probably be a better Aragorn than the
Need me a ring, mate.
So I don't think you can necessarily say that because it took longer to adapt Lord of the Rings into film is necessarily a bad thing, because, I mean, look, the technology exists now to do it properly. I mean, if they had done it like back in the 70s, it would have been incredibly limited, probably watered down, because they wouldn't have had to have these huge scale
Your budget
battles.
would probably be astronomical.
Yeah.
The special effects needed for one Star Wars movie are far more complex than walking through a bunch of fields.
There's more to it. I mean, the amount of money they'd have to pay the extras for, Helm's Deep alone, and effects that you probably need for like the Ents and all the makeup and stuff. for
Also,
the
Lord of the
orcs and all
Rings
other
introduced
creatures.
us to
The budget
motion
for
capture.
Hobbit feet alone.
Yeah,
would
and
be
also
obscene.
it introduced us to motion capture with Andy Serkis, the great Andy Serkis, playing Gollum, who's an incredibly
His
underrated actor, by the
career,
way.
really.
Well, when did first Lord of the Rings come out?
Yeah. Refresh my memory.
Honestly,
2001.
It's 2001.
2001.
2001.
Okay, well,
honestly, I
yeah.
don't think when they came out is
No,
all
but we
that
had motion
consequential.
capture first, technically.
You could have said the same thing about Star Wars. Something like that being made in the late 70s, the technology wouldn't have matched up, and it still does to this
Yeah.
day. It looks great on Blu-ray. I own it, and
The
It's
original
yeah.
trilogy
Because they've
holds
updated
up.
it for
yeah.
The prequels, however, the CGI in some of those, not so much, which is actually kind of bad, considering the fact that, like, the prequels and Lord of the Rings trilogy came out roughly around the same time.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings special effects hold up pretty well.
Not
The
Treebeard.
prequels,
Treebeard looks awful.
he looks better
He
than a lot of the
looks
CGI
awful.
scenes in the prequels.
He looks.
And
Yoda in Episode
also-
3 looks better than Treebeard in Return of the King.
Episode 3 Yoda.
Yeah, Episode 3 Yoda looks better than.
Because he didn't look that great in the second one, so they're like,
To
crap.
be fair, Episode 3 Yoda was in like 2006. Was that when?
5.
When did Return of the King come out again?
2003.
Okay, so a couple years of.
Yeah.
All right, just
Also,
throwing that out there.
just an interesting little bit is, also, you're, like, as much as I hate to say it because I love the original trilogy, but even the trilogies have now been blighted with all these, like, extra scenes and stuff like that George
changed,
Lucas has added, which are now a part of the canon, which means, sadly, Han did not shoot first.
But did it really affect the
That could
story
be a whole
and the
debate.
movie in any way? Like, I'll go back and watch those. Sure, they may not be necessary, but does it really hurt your viewing? Do you get upset
I mean, the
and have to
Han
watch
shot
the...
first thing, yeah.
They shoot at the same time, actually, which really means Han was still planning to shoot at that
Yeah.
moment.
That totally changes his character, though.
Yeah.
Not
If
really.
he didn't shoot
he was
first,
still, he
he's
was still,
supposed to be kind of the
He
scumbag.
was still
but
planning to shoot at that moment.
Yeah.
They just shot. Greedo just happened to also
He
shoot at that
didn't
moment.
need. I think
They shoot at
it's
the
a
same
boon to
time.
his character.
Why is
He
Han
would.
Solo still held in high regard today?
Yeah.
Even after that existed, why is he still one of the most famous heroes in all cinematic
Well,
history?
because originally he did shoot first. I mean,
Yeah, he did.
I'm not saying there aren't other
How does it
reasons.
hinder
I'm
it?
not saying
How
there are
does it
other
hinder
reasons
it?
to like it. It does change his character though, because I
How?
think it's better. Especially, it adds that element of like, should we trust this guy?
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't.
Because,
I think
you
it
know,
adds
still
that
there.
mystery, which helps
No.
it. Not as much.
It's still there.
Not as much.
Yeah,
I think it
I-
hurts it a little.
Because even then, you can
Why did
still
it need
learn-
to be changed in the first place?
Even
That's
then,
why
it's-
it's the
George
director
Lucas got bored.
and
Yeah.
creator going back to
He's like,
change.
look-
the
look
thing.
what I
that's
can
a
do.
big problem.
Was it
George
not good
Lucas
enough
gets
the first
bored.
time?
Yeah, but look what I can do.
George Lucas had a lot of money and a lot of clout, and no one would tell him.
And there
no.
were still
Yeah.
things,
Prequels.
That's the problem.
but with the trilogy,
Hobbit.
there were still things he wanted to
Hobbit.
do that he couldn't do in the 70s and early
The
80s
first two were
that he
still
wanted to
there.
go back and do for the
Yeah.
97s.
That's fair.
But you brought up The Hobbit. The Hobbit trilogy is overall more
Terrible.
enjoyable.
Long.
It's still more enjoyable than the prequels.
The first two were
Here's the
thing,
fine. I'm
Wait,
gonna be
wait.
honest. I wasn't a fan of the third one, but
Yeah.
The third
first
one
two were
sucked.
fine.
The third one of
just
our
throwing
premiere
it out
was
there.
actually pretty
Even
cool.
I have to say,
We're missing the
that
key
third
word.
one sucked.
He used the word enjoyable for Hobbit. What do you call Star Wars prequels? Those are most enjoyable, quotable movies I can think of.
but for the wrong reasons.
Good.
But
Danny.
they're still, you can still have fun with it. The Hobbit,
Hobbit-
it's just there. It's forgettable.
Unlimited power.
but
We
they're
could, we
better
could, we could,
quality
we could
films.
talk this whole debate in prequel language
Yeah.
and still win.
But the Hobbit trilogy is
wrong
not
reason.
nearly reviled as much as the prequels, because the prequels, like, divided the entire Star Wars fan base.
But
Because
that's-
basically, like, the original fan base, that's like their Vietnam. They don't even acknowledge, some of them don't acknowledge that exists.
But doesn't that just speak to how great the originals were?
Yeah.
That people were united. Even the prequels, even though They weren't. The first two weren't even.
It's no secret.
Good.
Well,
yeah.
there's 5 of us here. There's no secret that the prequels aren't, great.
But it still united people in their hatred over Jar Jar. You would go to conventions.
Jar Jar was a big part of it, but it wasn't just Jar Jar.
You would go to protests,
I agree
and you
with
would
that.
see people who had made, like, carbonite Jar Jars and just holding them outside, like, in protest.
But again, like, they're
United
more...
people in their hate.
Again, but, like, there's more problems than just Jar Jar. Yes, Jar Jar was a very big part of it, but also the really long pod racing scene, which it was cool at first, but it's
It was
like...
well done.
Well done, sure, but did it need to go on that long?
It's still well done.
No.
They cut a lap out.
Yeah.
Also, there's
big
a
help.
scene where Darth Maul, like, he doesn't even have, like, full makeup, like, around his neck, where I guess they just got lazy. It's like, whatever. No one
The
cares.
films are aimed
It's
at
the
kids.
only other thing that's showing.
The films were aimed
You're
at
not
kids. And
Plus,
I know as a kid I
can I
didn't even
just
pick
say-
up on that.
It's a good point to. I think the biggest failing of the films, even the originals, was they don't delve into these really cool characters they have.
Yeah, they, like, underutilize, like, Darth Maul,
Especially
General
Darth Maul.
Grievous.
How are any of your characters delved into?
Yeah.
I watched Lord of the Rings fairly recently, within the last couple months. I can't relate to a single character.
Okay,
I'll admit it's well done, but there's not a single...
Where's the Han Solo guy in
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings that you
Well,
can
we-
relate to and think that's the cool guy? They're all
Will you
pretty
admit,
just
though, that,
kind of dull and
medieval
right there.
kind of fantasy stuff isn't really your thing, though?
Yeah,
So
but,
coming from it from that perspective, yeah, maybe you don't relate to it as much just because
But
you're
I
not
just-
a fan of the genre.
But I just don't relate to the characters. There was nothing about any
Okay,
of the
here's-
characters I could latch onto and say, okay, I'm seeing it kind of from this guy's point of view. I can understand why he feels that. I didn't...
Here's the whole thing with, like,
didn't get
I'll
into
focus
that.
on Frodo in particular, being the main protagonist of the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I mean, Elijah Wood, come on now.
You're taking...
He was great in Wilfred.
You're taking, like...
Can't disagree.
Like, first off, there's quite a few similarities between Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, because it ultimately is just
One
like
just
your
copied off the other one.
inexperienced protagonist thrown against all the odds and overcomes evil, that whole thing. But basically, in Lord of the Rings, you've got Frodo, like a 3'5" humanoid type creature who goes out into the world of like humans and elves and dwarves and trolls and all these terrifying
much
creatures.
bigger than himself.
Yeah,
You don't want to be Frodo.
Hobbits are just Ewoks that Ewoks have more emotion.
but better Ewoks.
Hobbits shave.
I'm going to disagree with that.
I thought I'd try it.
The hobbits are like better versions of Ewoks. They're not trying to eat you. They're not trying to sacrifice you to
They
their
just want
own
a snack. They're
gods.
hungry.
They're quite refined.
They're just they just like to relax in their little shire and just keep to themselves. You know.
But did you
Smoke
really?
behind you.
But did you really relate to Frodo?
I did, because first off, I'm short, so the hobbits
So you automatically like
and
them.
I
short,
enjoy
too.
I enjoy being like out in nature, being close to nature, like the hobbits, which is why the hobbits, or Frodo in particular, was able to resist the powers of the ring so much, because he was so close to nature and so innocent and everything, and also
He had
again,
Sam.
and so,
Like
he
that-
had
the brotherhood there.
I wouldn't call
like-
it brotherhood. That was
Whatever.
Sam is the
Straight-
really poor version of
straight on man
Chewbacca.
love.
That was
The
my-
really
yeah.
poor.
My big problem with the one of the many endings of Return of the King is that Sam marries some woman instead of Frodo.
Yeah.
I think
Frodo's going away against his will, so he's just
that didn't
making
make
the best of it.
That didn't make any sense to me either. But
Yes,
actually it did make sense, because here's the thing.
maybe not to you, but it did make sense.
It's
Tell,
Okay,
tell
well-
us why that makes sense.
Okay.
Let's
I
hear it.
gotta go
Here's-
away now because the book says I did.
After everything he went through, he's not the same person anymore.
Felt like the same person.
Getting back to
no,
originality.
You really
hold on.
just you
Hold
can't
on.
read into subtext.
Let me
at
explain a
all.
bit more.
We'll let them explain here. And then
Another thing
rebuttal.
too is, again, as I was saying, Frodo had never gone outside the Shire in his entire life prior to the adventures of Lord of the Rings. So after all the adventures and chaos that came from like the
Walking to a volcano.
walking to a volcano. That's a long
walking
that's a long
up.
adventure.
That was a whole lot.
Keyword walking.
Having to fight through hordes of orcs, urukai, goblins, and other terrible creatures.
Constant fear.
And even humans.
Being
Humans
chased by all these
themselves
things.
being corrupted by the power of the ring and having to escape all that. And little creature that is obsessed with the ring and wants to kill you every time
you
you
don't know
close
who
your
you
eyes
can
or turn your back.
trust. It's just years of this constant.
The fact that he was able to go through all this,
Struggle.
toss the one ring into the fire, and even lose one of his fingers, which is, I imagine that's a terrible experience. You're never going to be the same just after losing a finger alone.
Yeah,
but
probably
after,
sucks. We'll give you that. Go ahead.
I think it's his ring finger too. So if he gets married,
No, it
he has to
was-
use his other.
Yeah. If
It
he
was
gets
his
married,
index
good
finger.
one.
Even worse, he can't point at people. He has to point at people with a nub. That doesn't get
He's too short. They can't
it
see him
doesn't.
anyway.
It doesn't get the point across if you're pointing with a nub.
If he's talking to
But
the
anyways,
You point with your middle finger. That's even more.
that's probably rude. Anyways, so
Did it mean the same thing back
after
then? I
all
don't know.
these grand adventures, which I'm sure was a lot of fun in certain points, they were terrifying. He comes back to the Shire,
fun to
back
watch.
to peace, but he's not the same because it's like he's seen the world, he's seen all the greatness,
can't-
all the horribleness.
All the
You can't just
grass.
go. You can't just
Can't
go back to. Yeah,
live life.
and also he has been corrupted by not only being stabbed by the ringregs, but also he's been corrupted by the power of the ring. Though not fully, it's still the fact that he has that on his conscience for the rest of his life. So basically, at the end,
That's kind of the price he pays.
Yeah.
I think
for,
they could've
for
got
saving,
that
it's
across
it's
better
almost
than
like
with it.
it's almost like a bittersweet
See how they did.
moment
get it.
where he saves the entire world, but at the cost of essentially almost losing his humanity in a way. It has to go to the Undying Lands with
Be that as
elves
it may,
and-
the protagonist, Luke, you see, when I watch Lord of the Rings, Frodo, from the first one to the third one, yeah, what you said, sure, but
I didn't
you don't
get
feel the
what-
way Luke starts out as a naive, innocent farm boy, becomes a Jedi, takes on a lot more.
Yeah, but Frodo
Going
doesn't
on-
become like
goes
this
on
great,
the Empire.
hero. He's still like a
He's,
very.
Luke's the more relatable hero to
He
go
doesn't
with.
have powers.
He's the
where he
better
can
protagonist.
Luke
He might be
gives
the better-
you-
He's what you're gonna.
Luke gives
and
you
stuff
as the
with his
viewer
hands.
He gives you
something
more
to
something to
strive
cheer
towards.
for.
He might be
Yeah.
the better protagonist, but it's still,
got
You
the
want your
better-
protagonist to
I
be
would
good in
say-
the film.
Another thing too, though, is Lord of the Rings has a stellar cast. Not just the actors, but just like of
I
characters.
would have rather had Carl Urban as Aragorn.
I would have been fine with that as well. But
Yeah,
I really don't see what your problem is with Viggo Mortensen. But
yeah, Viggo Mortensen was fine.
he's an excellent actor.
He's no Harrison Ford.
Let me ask you this, Star Wars guys. Here, is Frodo a hero? Is he a protagonist on the level of Luke?
Not on the level of Luke, but he's aimed to be that guy for Lord of the
See,
Rings.
here's another
supposed to
thing
be
too,
your
though.
main
With
character.
Do you think that hurts the Lord of the Rings franchise to not have the
I mean, yeah,
the
for me
hero
personally,
story?
because I would like someone to more relate with and just kind of, because I was, was clung to Luke as a kid. Just
and
to kinda
how
see
is
that
Frodo
hero.
not a hero? Without him,
He is
all
technically
of middle.
speaking a protagonist, but you don't.
Of course, well, you still need Frodo, but Luke's
No,
just a better
he is-
protagonist,
he is
better
very-
hero for a
hero.
film.
He is very much a hero, though. And what's even
He
You
walks
can say
to-
hero, but Luke's a hero.
He walks to the thing
I
and
think you're
throws the thing in
confusing
the thing.
protagonist and hero.
I mean,
protagonist
the Lego
doesn't
movie did that
necessarily have to
better.
be a hero.
Luke
But
embodies
that's what you want to see.
embodies the classic hero story
Yeah.
from
Yeah,
like
the
The classic.
fair point.
from like the
perfect-
Odyssey.
Yeah.
It's the
Like,
perfect
it's-
good
it's
versus
that.
evil.
yeah.
So that's why I'm asking
Yeah.
because Frodo is definitely not that, but Luke is. So how does that hurt or help their franchise? Is my question.
I would say because Frodo doesn't give you something to latch on to, and really he felt like the same person from start to finish.
yeah,
I
he
mean,
was just-
yeah, he's just corrupted or whatever. He's like he's
He's
still
got trials he has to face,
yeah, but
trails he has to walk.
yeah, he's got to do more walking. Once he gets off the boat, he's gonna walk some more. But with Luke,
Well, would you not want to walk? I mean, what's
It's not like
the
that.
other
It's
Not for
option
3.5
there?
not like they have
hours.
planes. They can't just
Not for 3.5
buy a plane
hours.
ticket to
They do have
Mordor.
eagles.
Would you
Yes,
want
they
to just
do have
never
eagles.
walk again after that?
All right, real
Get on
quick.
the boat and just
We have the
not
Millennium
walk
Falcon. You
anymore?
have feet.
Let's take a sidebar. Explain to them why the Eagles were not involved. Because I know
will.
you know the answer to this, and I do
Yes.
too. But I
Okay.
want to hear you.
So
Explain
basically,
it.
the reason why is a part of Gandalf's original plan. One reason why they had to go over the mountain was because if they go over the mountain, they get to where the eagles are. And because basically part of like what Gandalf's grand scheme is, once they reach the eagles, they don't have to worry about anything. The eagles take them to Mordor, they drop the ring, bam, taken care of. However, and crossing through the mines of Moria, the Balrog awakens, one of the most terrible creatures of all Middle Earth lore and the whole universe.
just
so
like that
basically-
space worm in Star Wars.
But is that nearly as terrifying as a giant fire
Flame-
demon?
yeah.
Rancor,
But basically,
But is the Rancor on fire?
it is not.
Does it have a big whip?
It doesn't. The Rancor is just a mindless beast.
That was innuendo.
But anyways,
Rancor Keeper has a weapon.
after Gandalf has to fight off the Balrog, or he fights it later when they fall down the chasm.
Which is just one of the great.
But basically, right before he falls, he says, "Fly, you fools," hoping that one of the members of the Fellowship will be like, "Fly, eagles! Let's go to the eagles." But sadly, no one does. But if they had, would you have wanted them to be like, Eagles, yay, and then drop the ring? No, that takes the story out of it. It's just
kind
it's
of a
boring.
Boring.
Would have made
So that's why the
movie 4
Eagles
hours.
don't. That's why the Eagles don't show up unless Gandalf is involved.
That would have
Because
cut it
Gandalf
down
does
from,
summon
like,
the Eagles.
a week to 3 days of watching.
3.5.
The Eagles. He uses the Eagles to escape from Saruman when he's being held captive. He also uses the Eagles again to save Frodo and Sam after they toss the ring into Mount Doom. So that's why they didn't use him from the very get-go, which I know a lot of people criticize. It's like, oh, the Eagles, why aren't they using the Eagles? That's why.
I get it as a plot device, but it just kind of
But it's, I mean,
cheapens it, I would say.
I wouldn't say it cheapens it, because, I mean, like, Gandalf was the only one who knew, like, how to get to the Eagles. All the others were just kind of like, oh, I guess we have to go through, like, Lothlorien and trek through all the other, like, countless miles, go through Gondor.
Well, where were the Eagles when Gandalf came back? He waited till, like, the very end.
Well, he had to, like, because basically, Gandalf...
Imagine he had a lot of things on his mind with, like...
Violating Frodo.
Saruman had betrayed
And fighting the Witch King and
yeah.
whatnot.
Fighting the Witch
Touching
King.
Frodo and Sam.
Alright, I'm the judge,
They
so I
weren't
can,
even near each other. They couldn't... And Sam and Frodo could touch, but...
I'm the judge, so I can break the rules a little bit. The Eagles, if I recall, some of them were actual characters in the books. I know it's not portrayed in the movie.
It is not.
So, this doesn't hurt your point that the Eagles are stupid.
Yeah.
But
Even fans say they are.
just know, for anyone that's concerned about the Eagles' place in this world, they're actual beings that think and have their own agendas. Maybe they don't want to just carry a couple guys over to a mountain. Maybe they're busy.
I get asked that a lot. It's like if you have a truck, you get asked to move like every weekend.
Or ultimately, they don't want to get involved in like a large-scale battle, literally between good and evil.
Very understandable.
So-
Much like the Ints.
That would have been great if they had shown that in the movie.
Well, there's only so much you can show. Even in the extended versions, there's so much in Tolkien.
Where you're coming from, I don't think you want to add another day.
Really
It's already
don't.
long
Even
enough.
though you could watch it in one
Star
day.
Wars is the perfect amount of time.
Yeah.
It's just a little over 2 hours or something always going on. It divides the three characters up. You got the hero, Luke, the damsel in distress, Leia, and the
She's not really
scoundrel.
so much a damsel in
Well, in the
distress.
beginning,
First one,
but
she
you know,
is.
the princess, the chick. You
There
know,
she
that
is.
gets
She's
the good
breaking
three.
that. She's breaking that stereotype
You
of
got
the
the
damsel in
three
distress.
good characters.
Where-
and there's
where's
always
your-
something going on.
Where's your female lead?
The pacing's great.
You mean Steven Tyler's daughter?
Yeah, what did she
Are we?
do in those movies besides show up and be like, I'm in
Where's
love
the
with
eye candy
Aragorn?
at? They're all covered
Also,
up. We
Maria
get Slave
Donna.
Leia.
Yeah,
Slave
Slave
Leia.
Leia. Where is your metal
Come on.
bikini?
That's just not the.
Point.
No,
Not
where's
a
your metal
thing.
bikini?
It's not a thing. It's not really. It's beside the point. Really.
Not really.
That's the enjoyment of a regular film.
That's-
Whether it's
yes.
not in the book or not, it still just adds enjoyment to a
It's
film.
enjoyable, but I don't think it detracts in any way.
No, but it adds. Definitely in Return of the Jedi.
Where would you have it fit in? In Lord of the Rings?
I would find a way. George Lucas would find a
You
way.
could show some love scenes, you know. They bend the rules. They add stuff.
But here's
Yeah, where was the
Okay.
We'll get
big where was
into
the
that,
big banging scene between Aragorn and Arwen?
I was waiting for
here's the
that.
thing though
Well, if they'd
is
written Helm's Deep differently, you might have gotten that, but you didn't watch the bonus features. So
I didn't.
whatever.
another thing too though is like, do you really want like a whole like drawn out love like thing between like Aragorn and Arwen? No. Like anytime they add romance into movies, like the prequels, that whole thing with like Padme and Anakin,
it's
like
so
I
funny.
don't care,
Yeah.
I
But
don't
you know what?
care.
I think
But
Viggo
Han and Leia's
Mortensen
is
is a good enough
great.
actor to actually pull that off, whereas Hayden Christensen, it's just
Han and
like,
Leia's romance is great. You see it from the beginning all the way to the end of Jedi.
And then she
the way it
kisses her brother.
progresses.
You see them, but she
Because
didn't
she didn't know.
Yeah, you see them grow as a couple.
Good
They,
try.
know.
Good
they
try.
bicker. They
Actually,
have
at the
conversations
end-
like actual couples do.
In Return of the Jedi, like they did pretty much know
Well,
the whole
what you're
time.
gonna try, yeah, good try and good effort for that. But
She didn't.
he was trying to
really
make
know.
more of a point to Han. She was mad at Han. She was, you know, if 3PO was right there, she would have smooched him. So it just happened to be Luke was laying
Yeah.
there. He was hurt. She was wanting to make him feel better. Luke didn't know at the time.
Luke didn't really.
So it's
ever
not
have a
weird
chance with
yet.
Leia. Even if they weren't siblings, he didn't really have a chance with her. It was always Han.
And it feuds even more argument between Han and Leia at Echo Base.
Yeah. And their arguments were great. They bickered like a married couple.
Yeah, you
could
could
see
actually
them-
relate. Where
You could see that. Yeah, you could see them kind of growing.
Lord of the
together.
Rings, like you don't use that dialogue. And
All you
everything
get
like
with
Yeah, it's
the only
more
thing,
refined.
The
Yeah,
only thing
it's a different
Aragorn-
time period, though,
The
so
only
they wouldn't
thing
really talk. They
Aragorn
wouldn't
So Star
and
Wars,
Arwen have in
galaxy far,
common
far
is
away.
that they are in love.
But they sort of interact with each other in a more modern way.
Yeah. It's easier to
More
relate to,
relatable way.
and more viewers will like it more.
But again,
Yeah, that's-
the whole romance with
that's
Aragorn and Arwen
arguable.
wasn't
Good.
that necessary. It's kind of just like, yeah,
It
they
really
love each
wasn't.
other, but it's like
But if
they
you're
didn't
gonna-
draw it out, which was
But I
good.
I don't think it was.
But
It
if
wasn't
you're-
really necessary.
When I was
to the
watching
film.
it, their romance scenes to me just felt like tacked on, and I hear they were, but that's part of the movies. If they're gonna have a romance, you should at least show them kind of talking to each other like people, not just "I love you" because that's what I'm supposed to do or whatever. There was no chemistry between them.
Well, because first off, Aragorn was trying to not, like, be in a relationship with her because she's an elf, she's immortal. So he's like, no, be with your people. As much as, like, it pained him, it's like...
even though
you-
he
but
can get
why-
pretty old, but he's not
Yeah.
gonna live forever.
But why do they love each other?
I'd have to rewatch the movie. It's been a while.
Oh,
I just
ouch.
watched the movies and I can't tell you. They had nothing in common. They had no shared interests. They weren't. They
Well,
weren't
okay.
a relationship. They were just
Yeah.
the love interest
Well,
of
before
the
I
story.
forget, what I think is more important, going back to the kind of breaking. So you said Princess Leia. She's not just the damsel in distress, which I agree. That that was a great thing
Yeah.
for that character. Probably
Well, the
brought,
way they
probably
started
brought a
out.
more female audience into that.
Yeah.
But you definitely get a lot more of that in Lord of the Rings, especially with Miranda Otto's character.
Yeah.
She's the one who kills the Witch
Eowyn.
King, after all.
But little girls, are always going to pick Princess Leia.
Yeah.
I think they're. I would argue that the female characters are probably stronger
In Star Wars.
characters
In
Lord of the Rings.
In Star Wars.
than in Star Wars.
we got Ayla Secura.
Even if they don't have a lot
Where
of
are
We got Ula,
Where are your
witty
blue
banter
girls?
and dialogue.
Twi'leks, bro.
Well, there aren't aliens in Star Wars. There's just your basic races, elves, dwarves, humans,
Where are you-
hobbits.
We have a
orcs.
more
This does
plethora and
take place on
variety of
Earth.
Yeah.
species, which makes it even cooler.
But doesn't make
Just
the
to
films
see it.
better, though?
Cantina scene.
Well, for
Enough
one
said.
thing,
I mean, it goes back to my point earlier. Yeah, they have a lot of cool different species and stuff. Did they really get into it at all?
Nope.
Well, they didn't want to make the movie 4 hours and then come out with an extended edition.
Also, that
which,
I feel
which
like
is why they had the EU. I know we're not
I feel like there
throwing
wasn't
that in
enough
because you all won't
background.
win if we do that.
Like,
but-
yes, it wasn't like a direct adaptation. There wasn't the source. There was a lot of books that came later, but I feel like they just kind of threw
If you see
in.
a cool character, would you want 10 minutes to explain it and then go back to the plot?
that's something they do in Lord of the Rings.
Well, it depends on how cool the character is.
This is Greedo.
But-
Wait, stop it, George. Let's talk about Greedo for a second.
I don't really care
Now
about
that he's
Greedo.
dead.
But I
let's
feel
go.
like they just threw in a bunch of, we just need random aliens because you get, the expanded universe stuff is really cool, but it's kind of happened
And
externally
they all
from the
have
films.
backstories.
But even
Yeah,
though,
but not
though-
originally.
even though we're not
This
talking
came
EU,
after the film.
we're not specifically talking
They
EU's
just threw
quality.
in
How,
a
how
bunch
would
of
you want it
alien-
explained
they
in the
just threw in a
film?
bunch
How
of
would you want it
alien
explained in the
characters.
film? How does that make sense?
It just helps add to the universe that there's this stuff
Would you not
always
want to see
going on
more
in the
Boba
background.
Fett stuff? Would that not have improved the films?
I think it
Just
would.
Boba Fett.
That's just one example. but
Even then, I think
that's-
it would have kind of.
All right, name
detracted
some more.
from-
Darth
All right,
Maul.
moving on.
All right. Let me just say this. Both
I mean, it could go. I'll admit there's a lot of cool characters, but I
Yeah.
think one of the major flaws is that it doesn't even really
I
focus
wouldn't
on a lot
count
of
it
the coolest
major,
ones.
and I definitely wouldn't say major flaw. But
Where are the black people in Lord of
but-
the Rings?
Or the black people in Star Wars.
Lando,
Will Roll Hood,
Not
Lando,
around yet.
Captain Typho, Tanaka,
okay.
Ifkoff.
Okay, we're not going to win now.
Let me say this.
Middle Earth is not racially diverse, though I will say, if you did bother to watch any of the amazing bonus features in the extended edition, a lot of the orcs are ethnic.
Great. So they
Judge.
stargated it and made them into like creatures.
They hired
Judge.
black people.
They're,
and
they're,
put them in a
they're,
bunch of white-ish
they're in
makeup.
makeup, so
Yeah. Put them
it
in a
doesn't
bunch-
matter what race they are in that case.
I'm just saying they were hired on the film. They were given jobs.
And they're very well could be non-white people in
didn't
the costumes of the
discriminate.
aliens.
Yeah.
But let me just say, both franchises have these elements of things you don't know that are teases to the larger setting.
Yeah.
For instance, Lord of the Rings, you got that crazy squid monster outside of the Mines of Moria.
Yeah.
Not explained. Not really. Balrog's kind of explained, but not really. It's just like this deep corners of a gigantic world. Now, with Star Wars, you got people like Boba Fett, who is just there enough to tease, and, like, from his few lines of dialogue, you're like, whoa, this guy must be pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
And you want to know more about it. And
But they don't deliver.
But if they delivered too much, it could hinder and hurt the character.
Yeah, surely they
the-
could
That's why
balance,
some
though.
people were upset with Django. There's a little too much Django.
The thing is, when you start explaining things too thoroughly, you're either going to hit gold and everyone's going to love it, or they're going to progressively hate everything else.
You're gonna miss it.
Case in point, Prometheus.
Foreshadowing.
They took a mystery from... Yeah, I forgot to mention, we're going to debate Man of Steel versus Prometheus on Film Beef, but
It's gonna be great.
Tune into that.
Yeah.
Prometheus takes a mystery from the first Alien film that's just kind of briefly thrown in there,
Yeah.
and they explain it, and they make it worse. Like,
Yeah, some things are just best left.
yeah, you
Not
get a glimpse of things, and really all the aliens in the cantina are telling you is they're not alone. This is a gigantic universe. Everything's at play. But this is the story of Luke. Or in Lord of the Rings case, this is the
Things
story
that we
of
encounter.
about 7, 8, 9 people. Like, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So I don't think either side can really argue effectively that some things need to be explained more, because I think both film franchises do a good job of covering everything that needs to be covered.
Touching
a fair point.
touching about things on the unknown. Lord of the Rings is a book, so whether or not you read them all, you pretty much know what's going to happen. Whether they leave things out like the Eagles, like you were saying, Star Wars was
Well, there's a lot they left.
unknown.
There's a
But
lot
yeah,
they left
but
out.
you still
because
know
they're
generally
long
what will
books.
happen.
You know Gandalf's gonna
It's
come
900
back.
pages, so you know what's going to happen. But with Star Wars, it's totally new. I know we weren't around in 1980, but
I
who
was.
saw Darth Vader thing coming?
Yeah.
Like that changed, you know.
True.
Film
Like, that was one of the
landscape.
best, like, reveals in cinematic history.
People that haven't even seen Star Wars continually say, "Luke, I'm your father." They know
Yeah.
those iconic and epic lines. And
Well, I think that is a
everything.
benefit to your franchise being, well, the film franchise being around longer, though, because it's had
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
time.
Let me
But it's so
ask you guys
original.
this, Lord of the Rings side.
We already know. what was
I
gonna
forgot we're
happen.
not on video, so pointing doesn't work.
Yeah, we've had that problem.
Now we know that Star Wars has been around for 25-ish, 30th years,
Yeah.
30-ish years longer.
42.
Whatever.
Well, total or long.
I don't know
Total.
what year it is.
Not 42 years longer, but
Do you think the characters of Star Wars are more iconic due to time?
Plus,
And will the Lord of the Rings characters reach that level over the same span of time?
well, I think they kind of have, but not necessarily because of the films. I can
Oh.
kind of get into their cultural influence more, but I think that's more to do with the books, though.
yeah.
Yep.
Because, like, the books, like, had this almost huge, like, subculture.
All I really need to say is
right,
Led
but
Zeppelin.
we can't go into the books.
We're
True.
talking movies.
All I need to say is their influence on Led Zeppelin.
I
And other
think
One
bands.
right there.
I think this is an important point that you guys have to establish, because although Star Wars, I think part of the household name quality of it stems from marketing and toys.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I
all
mean,
of
it
that.
had got the biggest boom since 1995 and hasn't even slowed down at all.
Right.
Last 20 years.
So, why is Lord of the Rings? Is Lord of the Rings capable of reaching that level of
it's already fading. though.
Iconography.
iconography? There we go.
It's already kind of fading.
Yeah. Where are the people clamoring for more Middle Earth movies? They're no after the Hobbit. They're like, no, we're good.
Actually,
forget.
no.
I
There's
think
been several stories from the Silmarillion that have been like either like ideas for pitching like some of the stories from the Silmarillion, or like some of them are even in development hell right now, where they keep wanting to get them made.
shit.
But you know, with all
People
the
are gonna
with
people
like
are gonna see another
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings
uh,
world.
But that's the
movie,
difference.
like-
We're already getting Star Wars Episode 7 this year in a few
Yeah,
months.
people even after.
But
It doesn't
to be
mean
fair,
it doesn't mean it's not gonna happen.
Star Wars
for
is
Lord of the
backed by
Rings, though,
Disney.
but, yeah.
But even
bigger
after
pocket.
even after episode 3 and people were disappointed.
But it's
with
more of a
prequels.
demand.
I like that. Yeah, people were still clamoring. It's like, no, we didn't like those. We want more.
One of
Give
the
us
things-
more. Make it better. Clone
Another thing
Wars
too,
happened.
though, with
Not
you know,
part of
Star
the movie.
Wars.
Not part of the movies, but it did
Since-
happen because
Clone Wars is canon.
It is canon.
correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
It actually did improve my thought of the whole
Now-
prequel era, but it's not. It's not
I like
a
what
movie.
I like what I've seen,
Except for the
but
Clone
it's not
Wars
actually
it's not the
the
Samurai
movie.
Jack Clone Wars that are
No.
canon,
No.
right? It's the other one.
Yeah,
They're both great.
Yeah.
All right, just
The Samurai Jack one isn't
Um,
canon anymore.
but it's awesome.
It
So,
is. Yeah.
there's that.
Could be considered a movie because it is the length of one and edited together as one. Just
But not canon. Go ahead.
yeah.
I actually lost my thought. Get back to me. Get back to me.
We're talking about the, I guess, kind of long-term
demand
iconography of.
Oh, yeah.
Where's the
Yeah.
Lord of the
Tell-
Rings
tell-
toy section
tell
at
me-
Walmart?
Yeah.
Tell me Lord of the Rings
They're a little
impact on
classier
society
than Walmart.
in
They're-
40
What about
some
Toys
years.
R Us?
Lord of the Rings has already had a huge
Meijer,
impact
Target,
on
Kmart.
gentlemen. trying to argue here. Lord of the Rings has already had a huge impact on like cinema, on pretty much anything fantasy based, whether it be
music,
film,
yeah.
whether it be film,
Kind of
book,
reinvigorated that.
games.
I mean, you know how many
Like-
just medieval times movies came out?
Yeah,
But now they're kind of dying.
After that time?
no. Well, the thing is with movies
I feel
is
like
once
it's
you
moved to
do
TV a
once
bit
you
more
because
too,
again,
but-
Lord of the Rings was like the standard for books, and then once the movies came out, that was like the standard for movies as well. There were several like fantasy movies that came out before then, but they were hit and miss. So once
Same
Lord
with
of the
Star
Rings
Wars.
was
Very
basically
much so.
the pinnacle and the epitome of fantasy, once that comes into theaters, it is kind of hard to top that. So you could have a great fantasy story, and even if like everyone loves it, there's still gonna be people who are like, it was good,
Yeah.
but it's no Lord of the Rings. And then
Yeah, it's what
so it's
say it's what all other
So
films
it's
are
Star
measured
Wars
by.
for the space epic space,
space
opera.
opera, yeah.
They haven't been able to touch it.
Reinvented that
But-
genre.
and
But
yes,
is it
Star
the,
Wars. Star Wars did probably make the whole sci-fi genre
They did.
popular because
I mean, is it sort of the measure for sci-fi though? I mean, maybe
Well,
the
it's
space
It's on
opera.
its own level. You
The
really
space
can't
opera
compare it to
type of
anything.
Star Wars
but
is not
it's
purely
kind of
sci-fi.
fantasy.
It is.
No.
It's science fantasy,
I think
space
in your,
Yeah.
I think
Since
in
it
your
takes
general
place in space is why.
audience
Yeah.
kind of terms, you would just put it in the sci-fi category.
Yeah,
But another thing too,
touched
though,
more
is
is
it what all
genres.
other sci-fi is?
As an actual fan of
measured
sci-fi,
to?
I can say
Yeah.
it's not sci-fi. It's science
No, it's
fantasy.
So that's just where
strictly
you're gonna put it
sci-fi.
under.
Yeah, I feel like in
Yeah.
general terms,
Yeah.
you're gonna put it under sci-fi.
Star Wars touches more genres in
I
the
would
film.
probably argue that it's more fantasy than it is.
Yeah.
Fantasy,
I wouldn't
adventure,
but-
love, comedy.
And there's the thing, I don't usually like fantasies,
Direct
but I
and
love Star
indirect.
Wars. So it brings in
but
people.
Yeah.
you know, who set the standard for fantasy? Lord of the Rings. Now
I
again,
didn't
I know
set
this
the
is
standard
movies,
for
I know this is
sci-fi.
movies, but
Star Wars-
you could almost argue, though indirectly, Star Wars took a lot of influence from Lord of the Rings. So Star Wars might have still
In
came
fairness,
about.
probably not from the films, but
It might have,
I'd say more so from Flash Gordon.
yeah, more so from Flash
I
Gordon,
like
but
Vegas
even
and
still.
Can you
Still.
give us some examples of Lord of the Rings that you see in Star Wars?
I mean, this would be kind of hard to argue because it is
Unless-
like just
unless
such
we can get
a
into the source material.
very basic, like the whole.
It could be basic. Let's hear it.
Yeah, the whole good versus evil. You know, again,
That's
Lord of the
been on
Rings
forever.
and Star Wars both have that very like naive, young, you know, more or less farm boy. I mean, Frodo wasn't a farmer, but he was just like didn't really nothing special about him. Like they were content with
living his life.
The,
they were just
the
kind
everyman.
of,
yeah, the everyman.
Well,
and
kind
then
of secluded in their own world.
and then through you know
But even then,
very
the,
quick.
hero, the
Same with
hero's
Luke at
journey has been a
Tatooine.
thing long before.
yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying.
Simple.
It's very basic,
Yeah.
but you could. I mean, it's still that very same
know what you're
concept
talking
where
about.
you take them out of their element, and it's kind of like, okay, here's Frodo from point A, the very beginning of you know the Fellowship, and then book 3 or movie 3, at the end of his journey. Luke, in a way,
see
sort
him-
of experienced some of this.
But I see a much bigger
you
change in
keep
Luke.
harping on Frodo, which is accurate, but I mean, you see everybody. It's a big cast, and you see everybody's changed. The
Yeah.
other hobbits have gone through.
I didn't see any change in Aragorn.
Couldn't you?
Well,
he got crowned.
He
but
was already kind of
his attitude
older
didn't
at
change
that
any.
point.
He
One of the
was-
things too is
Still
Aragorn
don't really
didn't
get what your
want.
problem is with him.
Aragorn
but-
didn't want to become king. That was the whole reason why he went into exile.
didn't-
He didn't want.
I actually didn't even get that until I saw the Nostalgia Critic thing about old versus new.
And
I was
you-
like, Aragorn's supposed to be a king?
Yeah,
That
Aragorn.
didn't
And you
register
see
with
him
me.
overcoming racial. Well, you get hints of it. Like
Yeah.
they talk about it
That's
a
the
bit in
title of
extended
the third
editions,
movie.
but
Yeah. I
That's
didn't
why,
know it was
yeah.
him until he got crowned. I was like,
he's
oh,
was
that's
the
the
long
king that's
lost
returning.
king.
Yeah.
He just
He
seemed
never
kinda
wanted
whiny
that.
to
That's
me.
kind of his transformation,
Yeah.
I guess. But I mean, you
Because-
see overcoming racial boundaries, but the friendship between Legolas and
Gimli,
Gimli. You know, these are two
I didn't see
species that historically hate each other, and they
Yeah.
grow up hating each other. It's just kind of in the dogma of their cultures.
I also hate the
thousands
elves.
of years.
I
they've hated each other.
relate to Gimli in that.
Another thing too, though,
But
with
they come
Team Gimli.
together. I think it speaks to a wider issue that they find out. You know what? There's You know, why do our people hate each other? You know, there's nothing.
I feel like it was briefly
Not that
touched
different.
upon in Fellowship, and then like
Well,
they don't
that's
mention.
not what the whole movie is about.
No.
These guys become.
But they had like 2 movies worth of movies in each movie, and they could have expanded upon that a little bit.
Another thing too, though, that I think
more of a subtext.
I would argue that like the finale in like Return of the King is
was
probably
too long.
better than
Which one? Yeah, which finale?
Lord of the
There's a
Rings.
few.
Which finale?
Or like I guess
Which
the
finale in
the
Lord of the
final
Rings?
chapter, the final film in
The
these
one,
franchises.
the one when they're hugging.
I'm trying to explain. The Lord of the Rings: Return of the King was probably a superior film to Return of the Jedi, because in my opinion, like one thing that really that I thought was like a really powerful moment in the Lord of the Rings franchise, especially that the very last battle when they're at the gates of Mordor.
Thank you for reminding
Basically,
me of that.
what that came down to is they knew that Frodo was out there somewhere, and Frodo was the only one who could destroy the ring and end all this. But it's still the fact that
They know
he's
that-
God
not even
knows
really
where.
sure he's alive.
Yeah, they just know that like 2 months ago he was seen somewhere in that general area, and basically all like the last bit of humanity of humankind has to band together on very much a suicide
Already
mission.
after what they've gone through.
After
in
that
Minas Tirith.
huge battle of Gondor.
And they didn't take the easy
After
way
all
out.
of the walking.
Aragorn could have kept the ghosts around.
Yeah, what
Yeah.
was up with the
But
ghosts?
he's an honorable guy. And
That
he
kinda-
kept his word and he released them.
But another thing
That
too,
kind
though,
of came out of nowhere for me. I mean,
Look,
I,
like-
To be devil's advocate here, there are Force ghosts, which don't really make sense either.
yeah.
So,
They helped Luke with his training.
Another thing too, though, with
Yeah, they do.
with
well,
that
those guys
final,
help Aragorn.
well,
that-
there's at least a means given for it. Like Obi-Wan,
All right, just eliminate Bo.
with that final
we
battle
don't have an army of ghosts. We just have like 2 or
that you
3.
know of.
We have a couple that linger.
But,
Anyways,
but it's magic
it's
versus space magic.
and it's
Yeah.
it's also kind
Magic
of
versus the Force. We have
It's
the
foreshadow.
Force.
Space magic.
I think it's explained
The Force.
enough. I mean, yeah, you could get into it more, but I
if
think
you strike
when
me
they're-
down, I'll become more powerful and blah blah. You know, with that enough, you kind of like, okay, he's gonna do something if he dies, and he does.
But
Aragorn just goes into a cave and meets some ghosts,
Well,
and
there's a little bit of talk about the history. And
There is a lot of talk.
You know, how
But
they
anyways,
were an army
there's a
that
lot of
broke their
talking and walking.
prominence.
Talking
Okay.
Even the trees walk in your movie.
They've been cursed to, you know.
Jake, finish painting this scene here. This
anyways,
great scene in the movie.
I'm already tired.
after the huge battle of Gondor, they could have easily been like,
Which
"Hey,
was just an
because again they
amazing-
won.
Which
They
huge
somehow
battle-
won that battle.
Which huge battle was Gondor? I get all the huge
Minas
battles
Tirith.
confused.
Yes,
Yeah.
Gondor's the.
The
Giant
realm.
white
Minas
city.
Tirith. Minas Tirith is the
Oh,
big, white
You know, the
city.
stuff at Minas Morgul I thought was pretty cool
Yeah.
as well, but
But anyways, basically, after that huge battle, like the Oliphants, the men from the east, the orc, basically the final push of like the
There's
orc
your
army.
ethnicity, by the way. The men
Yeah.
from the east.
Yeah.
There we go.
But basically, like all the like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of orcs, then the men from the east on the giant elephants, and they
if you want to
somehow
get back into
still
special effects,
yeah.
most of they didn't have a ton of extras. Most of that was all. I mean, even the Helm's Deep battle, what they have a couple hundred
It was only like-
guy,
Yeah,
and then the rest of that, which looks great.
yeah.
And a soccer crowd for the noise. I think.
Yeah.
But basically,
Same with the
I mean,
Padres.
I thought all
but basically
There we go.
after
it's really
af-
interesting how
Soccer
all the
wins.
details
Judge.
they put into it. Yeah.
but basically after
Those
that.
still look, all those look real. If
Yeah.
you want to get into special effects a bit more,
But after that battle, they could have easily been like, "Hey, we saved the day, woo!" But it has to be Aragorn has to be the bearer of bad news and be like, "It's not over. Yes, we won a huge battle. We've lost countless people. We can't mourn them.
you know they still have.
We have to
so
push
many
forward.
orcs.
We have to push forward into the land of the enemy, like this dark, shadowy land of fire and ash and death, for a tiny sliver of a chance that they might buy enough time for Frodo to go from
It
whatever
really is
point
a
he's
sui-
at."
It's a sacrifice. It really
Yeah.
is a suicide.
This description's even
Knowing
taking
first-
too long.
Knowing
Is this
full
still an
well,
ending?
yes,
He's
knowing
painting a beautiful.
painting
Thank
a
you.
beautiful
Thank
picture.
you.
Thank you.
It's
I'm
Picasso's
gonna-
here. I don't care.
I'm going to turn the floor over to you all here in just a second. Go ahead, finish up.
But knowing full well that
the
every
energy.
single
I
one
just
of
have
them
one point I want to make on this, but go.
is more than likely gonna die, and the fact that the people they could have easily been like, "No, we just fought a huge battle. I'm gonna stay in my home." But the fact that he was able to motivate all those people, it's like, no, we have to fight for the small chance that we can give Frodo enough time to get to Mount Doom and throw that ring in the fire and save the entire world. Otherwise, we'll be covered in darkness. And
say-
they followed him, knew to their deaths at the
say,
gates of Mordor.
All right,
Okay,
quick point here.
Anyway, my quick point, which is really only going to mean something to Jordan and Jake, but
Everyone but
Yeah.
me then.
Yeah, you won't really get it because
Excluding the spaceman.
But anyway, probably one of the most epic speeches in cinema history.
That's a bold claim.
At the gate.
I would say Interstellar and Pacific Rim did it better, but go on.
Anyway, that speech inspired an awesome Megadeth song called "This Day We Fight."
Yeah.
Never
off
heard of
of 2009's Endgame, which I think is probably the best Megadeth album in the past
Super Collider.
10, 15 years. But that really doesn't mean much.
Another thing, too, if I may add one more.
All
I
right,
just
real
wanted
quick,
to get that
real quick.
information
Yeah, I
out
mean,
there.
they're
Yeah,
talking
how
the
the
whole
film,
time over
real
here.
quick.
how the film has inspired things external.
Dave, shut up.
You got
Like,
2
one
minutes. Go.
one
How
little
much did
thing
you pay off
is
the judge?
there were some moments in the Lord of the Rings trilogy like where I got goosebumps because I was so just blown
Me too
away.
in Star Wars.
Star Wars, yes, but more so Lord of the Rings. Like especially like
For
the
you
battle of
personally.
Helm's Deep was amazing. The Ents when the Ents go to war because for the longest time, yes, the scenes were maybe a bit dull at points.
But it's
A
the
bit.
build. It's the
But it's
build.
the build
I
up.
literally fell
Of when
asleep
the-
every
of
time
when the
Treebeard
ants-
showed
But it
up.
took too
Okay,
long to
okay.
build up.
It's Star Wars floor now. All right. So he painted a picture of a great scene in the Lord of the Rings franchise.
I've already forgotten it.
Please do a Star Wars one.
Well,
As
just
a
talking
rebuttal,
about,
just paint us a picture
Well, he
here.
started with the ending. I'll do ending of Return of the Jedi. It's
Okay.
still epic. It's a lot shorter and sweeter. It's good versus evil. Father versus son.
Yeah.
We have Darth Vader, which
We have
we
much
haven't
better
even
villains.
talked about yet. Darth Vader's being
We got you beat
villain.
on villains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can get into that, but go on.
Ours can't die though.
That's so cheap. That's like that takes
Neither can Vader really, because
No,
he would
yeah,
probably
yeah,
just
it's
turn
fair.
into a ghost.
fair point.
Well,
It's
he does.
Force ghost.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
Luke does defeat the Emperor and Vader, but they're still good in Vader. That's how everything can come to be. He's dying. He's trying to save him. He has to go on. Goes over to Endor, tells Leia,
Yeah.
we're related. We're twins. Everyone has a celebration. They're happy.
So you want to hook up in that shack over there?
No, that's the last episode.
Just implications of incest alone kind of cheapen that.
As I said, though, there is a
Not
psychological basis for that. As I said that one time, there's a psychological basis to like siblings separated at birth get sexually attracted to each
Well,
other.
in,
It's weird.
I
in
feel like
Empire
it does
Strikes
happen in the
Back, you
real
can
world.
see Leia using the Force for the first time when Luke's hanging on, waiting to get picked up. He's like,
Yeah.
Leia, and she says, turn the ship around. You can already kind of tell something's going to happen.
Yeah. But I don't know. I feel like more people would regard Empire Strikes Back as the better film, and then because
It's
you
the best
yourself,
film.
Reverend Spaceman, has even stated that the end of like Return of the Jedi, that was like the downward spiral for George Lucas
The Ewoks.
going.
The Ewoks.
The
Well,
Ewoks.
not the fight scene.
But
the
the
ending.
pathos of the scenes of Darth Vader and Luke, just Luke trying not to fight, trying not to succumb to that evil. It really hit home a lot more than Frodo, because he was just like, he was ready to do it, and then just like, nah, I got the ring, it's mine. And then he just got it bitten off, and it fell in. He didn't overcome it himself. Luke overcomes the evil himself.
Which makes it more compelling, though.
More of a
makes it more
dynamic story
compelling.
when the hero
It's a more...
he kind of gives in. He
It's-
kind of fails in a way, but they're
Without his
outside
trusted friend
circumstances,
Samwise Gamgee,
and getting his finger bitten off.
that was like his
think there's
penance.
more-
He
Yeah.
wouldn't have given up the ring if Gollum didn't bite it off of him. Luke, through his own sheer force of will, denied the dark side, even though he had every reason to succumb to it, to succumb to his hatred, and just he could have killed the Emperor there, but he was like, no, because that'll give me the hate to join the dark side. He did it right.
Well, I mean,
Frodo just gives up, and then through Deus
give
Ex
up.
Machina, yeah.
yeah, you should give up.
Frodo gives up, and then through Deus Ex Machina of Gollum showing up and biting his finger off, and then just dropping the thing.
That wasn't Deus Ex Machina because Gollum was following them the whole time.
Yeah, but it's more so than...
I feel like it would have been more Deus Ex Machina if
You're trying to
like
explain the film, like, just keep going back and
Would
forth.
have
Like,
been Ex
where's the
Machina
actual
if,
debate?
like Gandalf just
Where's your argument against us?
poofed in there and
You're just defending your
stopped
film.
everything.
no, but like again, yeah,
In what way is
You
Frodo giving up more compelling than Luke?
I feel like we have to
overcoming it through his
explain
force of
your
will?
sort of
because
misunderstandings.
that's kind of like your standard like your hero like
It's
through
great, but-
Because Star Wars is better and more straightforward. It's,
inspiring.
easier to understand.
It's great, but it's basic.
yeah.
But it's more inspiring. You see Frodo give up. You want to tell your audience it's okay to give up.
I mean,
Someone
I
will
think
bite your
that's
finger off, and
more
everything will be fine.
Inspiring is maybe more on an individual basis, but
Yeah.
No, if we're gonna talk inspiration, you know how many people have gone into the film industry, into special effects, everything because of Star Wars.
I think it's another thing
You
where
kinda hear that
you do
from
have
some
time on your side from
Yeah.
that point because, people that saw
Star
Lord of
Wars
the
fan
Rings.
films are coming out between the movies. Where are the Lord of the Rings fan films? They're probably out there. Is there a
But do you-
contest? Is there an official contest held by Peter Jackson or whatever
Another thing
to give an award to the best Lord of the Rings fan film?
well, I feel
No.
like
I know there could be. I don't actually
Yeah.
know.
Maybe.
Officially
another
sanctioned.
thing
There
too
might be. I
is
don't know.
I think the Lord of the Rings score by Howard Shore, by the way.
We got you in score.
Well, okay, yours
So I
may
think-
be more iconic.
Better.
This is a very uphill
Before we
battle.
get into
I
that, I
want to
think-
hear why you think Howard Shore is.
Peter
is
Peter
better.
Jackson has also done other things. George
It
Lucas
was-
has kind of just. Yes, he's done a few other things, but I think he's mainly just
Lived
kind
on
of lived off.
Skywalker Ranch because
lived
he has
off-
so much money and doesn't
Yeah,
really
I think
do
he's
it.
kind of lived off the laurels of one project.
Here's the thing: you
that he
can't really
created himself.
you
Indiana
can't really
Jones.
go into directors because Lucas only directed 4 out of 6.
Yeah.
So
And he was an unknown at the time. Just he
He was not a
burst on
complete
into the scene.
unknown.
He was
American
had-
Graffiti. How many people had seen that in 1977?
What?
American
Probably did
Graffiti.
okay.
It was well received enough to where people were like, okay, he
But people
be
didn't
honest,
know
I
George
didn't-
Lucas
I didn't
walking
care
into
for it.
Star Wars. They didn't know what Star Wars was going to be.
He
till
came
they
out
walked
of
in the
nowhere.
theater.
But-
and
Yeah, I mean, that took
Same with
me
Harrison
years.
Ford.
Clearly
Harrison
it
Ford
paid
had
off.
But I
been
think
an actor.
it was a bigger risk for Lord of the Rings because he first off he was again a
he was
relatively
kind of
unknown director,
obscure
and again the
horror
fact that he had to
director.
not only get like all the funding and everything for it, like because with Star Wars it was just one film. Now, granted, he did plan on more films, but he had to get that first one first. A New
Yeah.
Hope. Lord of the Rings is like, okay, here's my pitch. 3 years of filming in New Zealand, like a foreign country where it's going to cost tons of money to like get actors, ship, equipment, and all that there. And then for
And
three
I might
three
add,
years
just,
of filming,
just because of the natural beauty of the place, yes, it's in space, so you're not going to be able to
Yeah.
film in
Yeah.
space and whatnot.
Yeah.
But
We have more
I mean,
diversity
just-
with our planet.
if
Yeah.
you're talking
And
about
our
set
locations.
pieces
Fields.
alone, though, I mean, just
got
all the
fields.
detail and building
got
that went into
fields.
Helm's Deep and Minas Tirith,
Bunch of
the
fields,
miniatures,
forests.
Great
the
fields, trees. You got some
Yeah.
great trees.
Do you-
We got.
Can you
Beautiful
not,
leaves.
Can you not see the
I will
beauty
say.
in nature?
It's fine. I've been to New Zealand. It's not as cracked up.
But we
to
get
be.
the diversity from
you weren't in the
Hoth to
Middle Earth
Tatooine.
part.
No, I wasn't. But
So there you
I-
go.
So
I
that's
saw
sort
some
of-
it was fine. But
Well, whatever.
we've got different.
But-
We've got old planets. We've got you have fields, trees, forests, some old buildings.
I'm not
and
even
then-
really. I'm
and
not
then-
even really speaking like story wise. I'm just
No, me
saying,
too.
like,
I'm saying we've got.
To be fair,
Desert.
well, I mean, those are
Tatooine
created
is
rather than-
literally a desert, and Hoth
Yeah,
is
but I'm just talking
literally
about
a
the
Yeah.
glacier.
diversity. Yeah.
And then
but
indoors a
even then-
forest.
Even if all this was on one planet, it'd be we got desert.
Naboo, Coruscant.
Yeah.
All right, I'll
desert
give you that.
Camino.
swamp.
Okay.
But Mustafar is literally just a volcano.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
but,
most-
you just,
but
it's better to get that change than
But
being
that's-
in the same field.
But pretty much
That's
with
also
all those
realistic.
planets,
Not really in the
as a
same
viewer.
the
field.
planet Earth was as
all
volcanic as
looks the
Mustafar
same.
at one point, so that is there's
Yeah,
some realism
but
to that.
with
it's also
all-
it's also cool to look at.
with
them
all your
more.
diversity in
You have a
planets.
volcano, we have Mustafar.
We have a whole
But
planet
your-
of
your
I
volcanoes.
think I got
planets-
off on a weird tangent.
Yeah. But anyways, as I was saying though, I think it was more of a risk on Peter Jackson and the studio's parts because again, not only to get like he had to like all the actors that signed up for it had to have a 3-year contract. That's not many actors want to be like, okay, yes, I'll sign on for this
That's a trend today.
for now, but
This
not
was
before then.
pre.
Not before then. Now it's like,
It took them like 8 years. It's like an 8-year commitment to these films.
yeah, because they
Well,
had to
not necessarily actors, but I mean
just the crew,
crew,
yeah,
yeah.
just everyone in general is like an 8-year contract.
the wettest.
Which again is a very big risk for actors, anyone involved to be like, do I want to
for these
spend like 8
multi-year
years?
contracts on kind
That's
of
another
But it
beauty of
paid
Star
off
Wars.
because the Lord of the Rings trilogy is one of the best like movies, trilogies, and just movies in general in cinema.
next to Star Wars.
Star Wars was just started out. It could be a flop. It could turn into what it has. That was
How many awards has Star Wars won? Just at the top
Academy
of your head?
Awards don't matter. Ask Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
Well, he's
to
always
be
been.
honest, I agree.
Lord of the Rings has won
Words mean nothing,
17
but,
Academy Awards for score. Best, I think it won Best Picture for Return of the King.
You're really pulling out Academy Awards here when they don't matter.
The
I was
Lego
I'm
like-
not, I'm not
the
saying they
Lego
matter.
movie wasn't
I will s-
nominated.
I'm not saying they matter, but it's maybe just an interesting
The
little
awards
you
thing
know.
as a
I
whole.
mean, Star
yeah,
Wars is still one.
I think it is an
That's-
interesting
that's
point,
No,
and I think it also just kind of shows.
that's no scrub.
Even though we don't have much respect for awards,
No.
I think it
shows
illustrates what the industry thought of it.
It shows it shows that yours movies cater more to the pretentious award Academy Awards people.
Yeah.
They're
not
Not at
all.
Say that.
And
think
like
they were
overall,
just
like they were
that
nominated
good.
for. Oh no, sorry, they won 475 like awards, just all sorts of awards all over in total. 17 of which were
Yeah,
Academy.
it's like 17
I didn't care to do the
Academy
research on
Awards.
Star Wars, but I'm sure it's not as much, but it's still. I mean, they still won.
No, I mean
6
again, like I
Academy
know Star Wars
Awards.
won its fair share of awards, but it's
It was
I
also,
don't think that should really come down to.
It was
No,
also
no, no.
come-
One's
Star
better.
Wars also
I'm just-
came more from nothing because Lord of the Rings, even though it was kind of a risk to make it,
Lord of the Rings wasn't
It's-
originally. Peter Jackson didn't pitch 3 films.
Is
He
there
kind
only-
of got lucky in his
Yeah.
pitch.
he probably should have
pitched-
just made it
he-
one.
no,
He started
Maybe
out.
two.
He started
no,
out trying to.
there's
do
a-
no, you shut your mouth.
I can
You
think-
shut
I
your
believe
mouth.
he started out trying
Maybe
to do
two.
it one. He couldn't make it happen.
The Hobbit definitely should have just been one.
Yeah.
Yes, he.
I'll agree
we
with
can get
that.
into that later. He pitched 2. Luckily, who he was. I
think
guess
2
at,
would've been fine.
I guess at New Line
Yeah.
wasn't there 3 books, so he was allowed to make 3 films.
Yeah.
But the fact that we even got 3 films was kind of happenstance.
Yeah.
Well, trilogy is a thing because of Star Wars
Yeah.
was a trilogy.
We did start the trilogy.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. How did we not
Not-
start the
We'll
trilogy?
have to fact
Not the
check
same
that.
way
I'm
it
not
is.
100%.
Okay,
At
actually,
least on an iconic level.
I'm sure trilogy existed
As the
before
basis.
Star Wars.
And
Going
technically,
back.
it's not a trilogy anymore.
yeah.
It's 2 trilogies, and then
So-
a third one coming.
Now, third one coming out.
6.
It's a set of trilogies. It's a trilogy of trilogies.
with 2 standalones at least, and
Yeah,
an
now you get
animated-
all this other stuff.
an
So it's
animated
really
series
not a-
branching the 2.
Where's your Christmas special?
We have
You mean a
Christmas
terrible
special.
Christmas
Are you
special
sure
that no
that's-
one remembers exists or pretends doesn't exist?
Oh, it's got.
Why would Lord of the
fans.
Rings have a Christmas special? That would, like, dilute this brilliant universe
It would
of
cheapen
lore and mythology and story.
Well,
This very,
for the
very
for
similar
the Star
effort.
Wars flubs, why is it still regarded almost the greatest? Even with all
Yeah.
its faults, where Lord of the
a-
Rings hasn't done anything wrong, why can't we still get more of that?
Yeah.
Whether it's not films or not, but just
People are
everything.
still clamoring for Star Wars.
Once
like
the
I said
Hobbit ended,
before.
it's over.
But Star Wars
for
has a
now.
bit of an advantage because it isn't based on, like, a set of novels, whereas
There
Lord
we
of the
go.
Rings...
Star Wars
That's
has an
good.
advantage.
Well, I think that's.
George Lucas came up with it all
That doesn't-
himself.
that
Took
doesn't-
stuff from other stuff, and he made the story himself
He had a
and
little-
made it into something.
That
Made it
doesn't
into
really
a world
speak
that
to the
people care about.
quality
Yeah.
of the films, though. We're just saying there is source material to ours, and yes, it's limited. With Star Wars, yeah, you can kind of
It's
go
just
all
the
over.
beauty
But
of
that
it.
also, that's the
And
beauty,
that's
but
why
could also
that's
be...
why people clamor for more, because there can be. There's
But
not
that
as
could
much
also be a
possibility.
downside, because if you put too
More
much
for
Star
Wars.
Wars out there, you might... It must, like, just diminish in quality, because they're just like, put Star Wars
There's always
shit
gonna
out there
be new
right now!
generations.
Star
There's
Wars, do it in
always
your
a kid.
face!
There's always a kid
I mean,
discovering
all the
Star Wars
all
for
the
the first
EU
time.
books and stuff. They're some that are a lot
Yeah.
better than others.
And it's-
some are
I
Yeah, when I got into
really
Star
good.
Wars in like 1995, it already existed for 18
Yeah.
years, but it was brand new to me. It's
True.
same with other kids.
As much as
Every
I do
Star
love
Wars
Star
is
Wars...
There's
someone's
not going to happen
first
with
Star
Lord of the
Wars.
Rings, but
But there's more to go into and investigate, discover with Star Wars, and there is Lord of the Rings.
There's more
There's still
creativity.
tons with Lord of the Rings, but you can somewhere
yeah, I mean,
kind of find a
it
stopping
is
point.
finite.
To
There's-
be fair, Star Wars is the entire universe, right?
Yeah.
Or galaxy or whatever.
Yeah. It's a
Whereas
galaxy, it's not just one location.
Lord of the Rings is
It's not just Middle Earth.
fictional Earth.
It's just a
with-
country.
I mean, it has one major
It's
event. Well,
fictional London history.
multiple if you're looking at
Yeah.
England, the other stuff.
I would-
But
Go ahead.
there's stuff going on in different places of the world, I'm sure, and I'm
Yeah.
sure there's interesting stories to be told in Lord of the Rings. But like Star Wars has a lot more to work with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I don't know if I can necessarily throw that as a pro or a con in either direction, but
I don't think it is. I think it's just kind of a fact.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
Coming
think
from
you're.
Star Wars fans, though, it's definitely a positive.
I mean, it is a good thing that Star Wars fans
It's
can
not
always
limited.
have more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ready for more Star
But
Wars.
Lord of the
stuff.
Rings cannot always have more unless they go either further in history back to like
The War of the Jewels,
There's got to be
or...
a stopping point.
Yeah, again, I don't
And
know
then
that
if you
this
try to
is-
make too much more Lord of the Rings to keep up with Star Wars, it's going to be way worse than trying to
think they're really-
force Star Wars down your throat, which they're not going
Besides
to do
this
because they
argument, I
can't.
don't think they're really competing. But
Yeah.
again, I think that's
There's
kind
always
of more
competition.
or less just a statement of fact. It's not really a quality
Yeah,
issue.
okay, let's do something here.
I don't think
All right.
amount really detracts or adds.
Star Wars son, explain to me why the Lord of the Rings series is great.
It's really long. I'll be honest. I don't even love the films. I appreciate them,
You
but
whore.
I don't see
I
myself.
think that.
I don't see myself going back to watch them for another decade.
Well, I think that speaks more because, as we've touched on, you're not really a fan of the
I'll
genre.
touch on, 'cause
the
I
fact
like
that you
both.
appreciate, the fact that you can appreciate the films even though you're not really a fan of the genre, I think speaks to its greatness even
Alright.
more.
There's no secret I like Star Wars more, but I do like Lord of the Rings.
All right, let's pretend we're
I
not.
like Star Wars.
Let's-
I feel.
Let's pretend you guys aren't in a debate about
Yeah.
it. Explain to me why Lord of the Rings is good, and I'm going to give you the chance
I
to
like
do
the
this.
Star Wars.
I mean, it
Yeah.
is epic. Has great filming. I like the fight scenes. It is too long. I'm not saying that just for the debate, but there is a lot of material you have to put in there. I just think some parts were unnecessary, even if it is big on the story and to the book. But they're great films. I like Legolas was always my favorite character. I like the way, there are battles. It is a lot of walking, but there are obstacles they have to overcome and get with. But it's great. Came at a right time when all the superhero boom was getting ready to start. I think it helps in that way because more people were focused on the superhero stuff, and you give kind of medieval a rebirth in a way.
Get medieval on their asses.
Yeah.
All right,
Kind of
anything to
reinvigorate the
add?
genre.
It was a breakout performance for Carl Urban, who I'm a fan of.
Fantastic
Star Wars.
actor.
Yeah, so it brought us.
It let us discover new actors.
They
Even that
brought a
haven't
lot
been
of New
around.
Zealand
But I will
actors
say
into
one thing
prominence.
quick about Star Wars. In the trilogy, at least, we get virtually unknowns that we created Harrison Ford.
Yeah,
Okay.
You
Now-
created Harrison Ford.
Yes.
I did
Alright.
personally in a cave.
Lord of the Rings side. Pretend you're not in a debate.
Okay.
Explain to me why Star Wars is great.
And I've
Okay.
heard this from him.
So, again, the Star
I
Wars.
can see if you're cheating.
The Star Wars trilogy is amazing, especially like the original trilogy. I don't think anyone it still does baffle me when I'll talk to people who don't like the original trilogy because it's like
Or
why?
they haven't even seen it.
Yeah, that haven't even seen it because
I'm not
one,
saying
they've been
anything if you
around.
haven't seen
They've been around for so long, and they're such an iconic series, and they are great. And again, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. But then, even the prequels have redeeming qualities. Sure, they're maybe not as rewatchable as the original trilogy, but they have cool aspects. They add in new things to just the whole franchise and that universe, which is fantastic. And again, I've actually had many arguments with people who just keep trash talking the Lord of the Rings, Star Wars.
Trash talk Lord of the Rings.
The Star Wars both trilogies, more so the prequels, and I do defend it because I do have some emotional attachment to the prequels for because
I mean, you get a
We
lot
were
of
the right age.
we grew up with that. Now, yes, they don't hold up as well, but they still, again, they're not as horrible as I think what people make them out to be because
think
you are putting them up on a pedestal with the original trilogy. It's hard to top
It is
that.
hard to compare. I think part of my issue with, I guess, the lack of delving into all these other characters is because there's so many cool characters. It's like I want to, I want to see that. It's sort of, I guess I'm torn because
But that is the
it
beauty
is
of the
kind
EU.
well, I think that's why for me at least it's such a fault that they don't delve into it because they are such cool characters and I want to know more about them.
You could say even
I'm
though
with
it's-
you. I want to see more Boba Fett. I just don't know how much
I mean,
more
that
could
was
you have
kinda
thrown
just
him
my
in Empire.
off top of
Actually-
my head, but I mean,
He's
even,
in a lot of scenes. He just doesn't talk.
Yeah.
about
even in the
Empire.
prequels, I think Darth Maul was probably, as far as that kind of thing goes,
At
I
least
think
we
that's
got
the
him. He
biggest
was cool. And
mistake
he adds
there.
the
But
mystery. Look at all the stuff that is made about him now.
and he survived.
yeah,
he
but-
didn't die there either.
Yeah, he survived the Starlight Pit.
well, no, but I mean,
Um,
at the time,
And Darth Maul didn't
Darth
die.
Maul just-
Yeah.
Not according to canon, correct?
Well, I
Or
thought-
wait,
no,
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 yeah,
Clone
Star
Wars.
Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he did.
He did survive.
I'm still
Yeah.
not really clear on how he.
So that's just another.
I thought he was resurrected or
He
something.
got robot.
We can go into
that's
explanation of
what
that
I'm
later.
saying.
But
But anyway, yeah, I guess going back to that point, it's kind of why it's a bigger deal for me, I guess. But
Okay.
In the end, you're gonna have Lord of the Rings and Star Wars atop all the trilogy
yeah,
stuff.
for sure.
When you're just coming up with your list, that's
Well,
why
they're kind of the
you can have a
bastions
debate
of
like
their-
this.
I
and
think
it is very hard for me to pick.
Yeah.
But it's, overall, I guess I just like
For the sake of
I just
this.
like fantasy a little bit more. And again, I love Star
I think
Wars, but there are a
speaking
lot
just
more.
quality of
I guess like
films.
overall, again, like just taking everything out of the equation and analyzing them as films. I think the Lord of the Rings trilogy is better than even
Yeah.
the original Star Wars trilogy. It just as films, not like
I think they're better
You know.
acted. There's more attention to detail.
Well, I would say even if any problems you might have in the acting in the original trilogy are kind of intentional because Star Wars was made as an homage to the old film serials. You
Yeah.
know, you go in oh, they're playing episode 4 today. I haven't seen the first 3. Whatever, sit down and watch it. They were kind of cheesy, fun. That was the point of it. Like Flash Gordon, Flash Gordon was his major
Sounds like kind of an excuse.
Okay. So we're getting on a little over an hour. So
I could keep going.
yeah, I mean this could go.
I've got notes for hours.
This would be like a never-ending debate.
We'll just ask.
We're
Did
never.
you kind of cover all
We're
your
never
notes?
really gonna get anywhere.
No.
And at the end of the day, all of us would be willing to sit down and watch every movie.
Yes, multiple
So,
times.
Except for maybe you with Lord of the Rings.
Well, because I just watched them.
Can't
and-
tell you
That's
how
what I
many
think.
times I've watched.
The
I've
beauty
watched-
of Star Wars, it's the right
Rings.
amount of length. You're not
Yeah.
tired. Like when I got out of Return of the King, I was waiting for my medal when I walked out of the theater.
Well, I guess a closing statement for me is
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
go
we're
into
kinda-
closing statements. So
Getting
you
long
all
on
explain
time.
to me why Lord of the Rings is better than Star Wars.
so another thing with Lord of the Rings is every time I rewatch those movies, because I do tend to watch them like
You've got 4 minutes,
okay,
by the way.
like annually, like whether it be like every year, every other year. When I do rewatch them, I still pick up on things that maybe I didn't pick up on the first several times that I watched
always
them.
a great
Whether it's
sign
little
in a film.
details or slightly bigger details, or just I like picking up on some of these subtle things that really just help immerse you into this world. Star Wars to a bit, yes, but more so with Lord of the Rings. Anytime I rewatch them, I'm just like, oh, what? It's like, oh my god, that's amazing. It helps enrich the story more.
And I think there's a more I don't know if convincing's not the word I'm looking for, but I guess more of a powerful emotional narrative within Lord of the Rings as well. You've got
I felt nothing.
the overcoming of it. Well, that's
Had
probably
to
just
be.
your problem,
I
I
but
felt appreciation, but that's it. I didn't feel connected to any characters.
just
Go on.
that's just your problem. But yeah, well, I think it covers more issues. It's somewhat allegorical, even though Tolkien didn't mean it to be, but that's kind of getting into the books more. But yeah, I mean, I think you have the bonds of brotherhood and friendship, and you have kind of duty and honor and all that kind of stuff. Trying to class this thing up, man. You just bring
Well,
it
that's not gonna happen.
anyway, I wouldn't say I really feel strong emotions about about the characters in Star Wars. Like, yeah, it's cool, but I mean, I get the whole, Luke and Darth, and I guess I get the emotional narrative there. I just think it's more complex, and I think it's a more powerful
I
emotional
think our
narrative.
villains had a more
Lord of the
complex
Rings.
story to them, but
You've still got another
That's
minute.
what I'll say about that.
Anything else to explain to me why that Lord of the Rings is better?
Just I've sort of touched into if you did watch any of the extended edition appendices. I mean, just the incredible amount of detail the Weta Studios, just how they actually made the swords, made all the different props and stuff,
The
made
fact that
these
they
miniatures
adapted-
of these incredible miniatures of these cities and stuff for the
And also they
detail
adapted
shots and-
the movies very well from the books.
yeah, they actually had to adapt
I think that
from the
works
source
against it,
material.
honestly.
Well,
I think that could be another debate, really. But
what you said, I'll pretty much counter what you said. I've probably seen Star Wars. I don't know about Phil, but probably more than anyone in here, all 6 movies, and I pick up
probably.
on tons of things I've missed, and I go research that character that looked cool, and I can relate. When I was a kid, I was a huge Luke guy. I'd always had the emotional connection to him. As I'm getting older, I love Han. I find myself laughing at just little dialogue he says within all 3 movies he's in, as I can understand it more, with more of that humor.
We've got a few minutes and everyone gets some delusions of grandeur.
Yeah, just little lines like that, and you find that emotional connection at any age. Whereas like Lord of the Rings and prequels came out at the same time.
Yeah.
Now I am biased towards Star Wars, I will admit, obviously, but I didn't feel I didn't need to think as hard with Star Wars. I could already just connect like that, where you had to think, and I had to what's going on with Lord of the Rings all the time. I always have to continue to ask myself.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings is kind of an effort to watch. Like a comparison I made. It's about to get a little NC-17 here. Lord of the Rings.
Explicit.
Oh,
Watching Lord of the Rings compared to Star Wars is like jerking off with your left hand, or your right hand if you're left-handed. You start out thinking, this is a little more difficult, but I'm gonna get more out of it in the end.
This might be a good idea.
Might be a good idea. And then, you're about 12 hours into it, and you're just like, I'm just switching to the right. This is so tiring.
it's incredible stamina.
Yeah.
That's the moral of this story.
Funny thing is, you're still watching the second movie by then.
Yeah. And you're just kind of like, this is taking
12
more
hours,
effort.
you'd be into the third one.
I hope.
you're getting tired of it. It's your left arm's getting really tired, and then at that point you just switch to your right. You're popping Star Wars. You're just like boom, boom. 15 minutes later, I'm ready to go again. You know,
the emotional connection, the way it was unknown, and it's become what it has today.
The American dream.
Yeah, just from the score, you can play it at a sports game, a wedding, anywhere you want.
Yeah, we got you beat when the score comes.
Yeah, but
iconography of the score, but doesn't necessarily mean it's better.
I'd listen to Lord of the Rings score
It's kind of generic to me.
as a whole
It's fine.
over Star Wars.
It's fine, but Star Wars
can't tell
like,
the difference between that and Game of Thrones.
when you start hearing, dun
I
dun
could,
dun dun,
Yeah,
you just
iconic.
hear. But even when you're watching the movie yourself, you feel that.
Just
like,
because a lot of people know about it.
no,
doesn't
I'm
necessarily
just
say
talking. I'm
to its
talking about how it
quality.
plays in the movie.
But if you take someone that's
Justin
neutral
Bieber
watching
is
the films for the
popular,
first
but
time, they're gonna
Could you
probably connect to
speak to his
Star Wars.
quality?
That's not just the Imperial March. When you hear that playing, when Darth Vader's walking, you feel the fear that he is exuding.
I know.
You hear Lord of the Rings music, it's like that fits the scene. That's fine.
Lightsabers are gonna kill people that have
This is what it's
swords.
supposed to do.
But the music adds to Star Wars. Lord of the Rings just kind of you don't know it's there. It's great, but
I think it added to it, but
It's expected.
I'm a
it's
music person.
it's
so.
expected. It's not Star Wars music creates the scene that it's a part of.
All right, quick fire here. Just extra concluding remarks. I want two reasons from each person, real quick, just short, like bullet points.
You hear that, guys?
Can we do that?
Yes, yes, we can. All right,
Getting Dave to shut
Dave.
up.
start it off.
Oh, it's just kind of overall.
Yep, just 2 bullet points. Why Lord of the Rings is better.
Okay, first one is a film overall production.
Okay, there's one.
It's just so hard to fit it into a bullet point. Like,
I could interject while you're still thinking.
yeah,
Sure,
I feel like
you're all on the
I
same
could
side.
do,
Go
I could do a monologue,
Could
but I'm
go
just
into a
just
paragraph.
define it like that.
Deeper story and
Just trying to get there, but I don't want to use up all my bullet points.
and just sheer scale. I think was just a bit more epic than Star Wars.
So much more walking.
Which I know may be bold words, but
Okay, so one more for you, and then we'll switch to the Star Wars bullet points here.
Only 2?
Okay,
2 each. Yeah.
more powerful.
I'll let you go first.
More powerful story.
More powerful. All right. Go ahead.
Just the whole surprise element
Okay.
of not knowing what's going to happen because it is original adaptation. It was groundbreaking. It created a whole new way to look at film and to make film.
I'd say Star Wars is more memorable. While you might remember the whole story of Lord of the Rings, you can remember each individual Star Wars movie. It's also more quotable. I can maybe remember 3 lines of dialogue from Lord of the Rings. We've had whole conversations in StarArs quotes.
Yes.
Okay, so, all right. This is a tough call.
pressure's on you.
Let me just say, oh God, I mean,
This
Now that was good timing. Whip out your lightsaber.
How dare you threaten the judge?
Well,
we'll see how that
Kind
pays
of
off
space
for you. All right.
This could be Phil's last appearance.
So, first, I want to say that I'm proud that it didn't turn into a prequel bashing fest
I'm
between the
surprised we
two.
really barely mentioned the Hobbit. but-
Because, let me just say, the Hobbit 1 is okay. Hobbit 2 is good. Hobbit 3 sucks.
I,
It was, yeah.
I agree.
It was
I
the-
did not
As
like
far as the
that Hobbit
prequels
movie.
go, I watched them fairly recently. Episode 1 and Episode 2 are a real struggle to get through without killing
But they're
myself.
fun.
They've
We're
lost
watching it Friday.
They've lost almost all their fun in my eyes, but that's neither here nor there. I actually think Revenge of the Sith is better than a lot of people give it credit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
And that applies to Desolation of Smog as well. Both films are better than general public
Yeah.
So
perceives
you can
them.
kind of say 4 good on each side.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're about even.
I also tend to believe we didn't really go into individual movies worth versus the others, but I think Fellowship is like the best of the whole 6.
I'd agree.
And depending on the day you ask me, I will say either A New Hope or Empire is the best. I don't think there's an argument to be made about any of the other ones. So,
Yes.
this is tough because I don't think it's even really fair to compare the two. They're just
It
so
is.
different.
Just because they're trilogies.
Content.
They're both movies.
Star Wars. Star
we
Wars
could have
is
just done Star Wars and Charlie's Angels.
Yeah.
Star Wars as a
Yeah,
phenomena is crazy. Like when December 20
I think it's
18th.
18th. Yeah.
18th, when that rolls around, that is a huge deal. Like
Yeah.
crazy. But if Lord of the Rings 4 the ringing comes out,
The Ring.
Directed by M. Night Shyamalan.
it's not going to be a world of
Like
that,
you're not
quite
gonna
on
see
the
that?
quite on the scale of Star Wars. I think that as a whole, the extended editions benefit
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings
all the walking.
a whole lot, and I actually am not bothered by the length at all. I think it tells a more
Yeah.
complete tale.
I think it enriches the
Absolutely.
story.
With that being
Also
said,
goes with taste too.
I won't watch the theatrical versions.
with that being said, if we're basing it on what you were given at first and not these extra periphery things, then it actually kind of hurts Lord of the Rings to an extent. Granted, I've probably never seen the original versions of Star Wars at this point, right? Because there's been so many
It is
changes.
hard to. Yeah.
Well, the first it wasn't really changed and altered till '97.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
That's with our age and our generation. That's not a.
I'm not
weird
sure if I've
statement
ever
to say.
ever seen them.
Even the stuff George Lucas added, you can just kind of zone out through it.
But I will say the Blu-ray is just beautiful. It does not look like 77 or 80 at all. It looks like 21st century.
And I'll say this: I think, as a whole, I think Lord of the Rings sets the bar for anything fantasy related, any sword and sandal type fictional setting. Like, it is the bar. Star Wars, it's hard to replicate that.
True.
Like, the closest thing that I can think of is Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's still not close. So, I don't know. I mean, like, I want to say both,
Yeah.
but
There, like you were saying, there's a reason Episode 1 was the most anticipated film of all time. Same with
Right.
Episode 7 come up, one of the most anticipated films of all time.
right. And I will say that I completely agree with your point, Lord of the Rings side.
Yeah. So he's looking at us.
It's
Loader
a
guys.
it's a massive
We should tell the audience.
Lord of the Rings is a massive undertaking. Like, it's crazy what they did.
Yeah. And
All the
successfully pulled it off.
yeah, all the
how
stuff
they did
with
it.
forced perspective and like
I've made him kind of cry.
like the title screen on Fellowship with Frodo sitting by the tree in the
Yeah.
Shire with the music playing is like so memorable
Yeah.
to me. And it does pack quite a bit of emotional depth. I'll give you that. However, Luke in, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Star Wars experts, in Return of the Jedi, when he's fighting Vader and is just wailing on him with the lightsaber. That is like
There's
one of
goosebumps.
those moments
That-
that just gives you goosebumps.
Yeah.
And to see Vader looking at Palpatine, how he's getting electrocuted, that's my son.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, although there's more characters to get attached to and more ongoing stories in Lord of the Rings, as far as emotional depth, I think Star Wars takes it. And, there's not a whole lot of bad things I can say about Lord of the Rings, to be honest with you.
It's a hard debate.
But
Oh yeah, this is
it's tough. If we're basing it on argument alone, I'm gonna have to go with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
All right,
It's
and
bittersweet.
let me explain. I personally believe Star Wars is the better franchise. I'll just say that.
It's fair.
Well,
However, I think they made a pretty good point. Lord of the Rings side made a pretty good point about the films being better as far as like filming and all the technical aspects, and as a movie as a whole, it's arguably better, and I'll give them that. So yeah, it was a tough call. and
Yeah, but we had to limit this.
We thank
to
you for
keep
making
it in the film.
That was
That's
another thing
why.
too for me. That was like
we
the main way I was able
Had to
to
be
like
limited.
side with
touched
Lord of
on
the
it, but-
Rings.
But we also didn't get into villains. I think we probably would have.
Yeah,
I think that's
Yeah.
what just made it so difficult too.
yeah.
I mean, how do you compare
Yeah.
the,
Well, it's so
the
different.
plethora of
Yeah.
Star
So
Wars
different.
content to the limited amount of
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings content? But
so yeah, it's tough, and like I said, I personally still believe Star Wars is the bigger, better franchise. I just think your all's points were,
Paragraph.
yeah, like
Wait, that's what it takes to win.
We're
buddy.
emulating the books and movies themselves.
By being very long and hard to
I'm
follow.
worn out right now. I need a
Yeah.
nap.
We are true to our.
yeah, I feel worn out by it too.
Well, it's a lot of pressure on you to judge.
Right.
Done an excellent job, sir.
Yeah, and again, thank you for essentially at the last
Thanks.
minute.
Thank you.
And the hardest part too is like the the Lord of the Rings franchise just it's got a sour taste in my mouth at the moment because of the last Hobbit movie.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
it's fresher on everybody's mind as well, which I think is kind of another point. To
and then Star
people not
Wars.
looking forward to more.
Star Wars, the hype level is through the roof.
Yeah.
Because here in a couple months we're gonna see a
could-
freaking new one.
Could
I mean,
be
Yeah.
disappointed again. We don't know.
No.
I doubt that.
no, like I said before we started recording,
I hope not. I
it'll
hope
be
not.
good.
I just
It'll
don't
be
know.
good no
Yeah.
matter what. It just what level of
Yeah.
greatness will it
It'll be
achieve?
better than prequels. It just
Absolutely.
it'll be the middle of the three trilogies.
I got faith in J.J. Abrams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same with me.
Not as much
So-
as I used to, but
So no offense, Star Wars side. Just got to give it to the Lord of the Rings guys. I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
they,
again, this
I
was
think they
very
made their argument.
based on argument.
yeah. It was hard to talk badly about Star Wars, really. And imagine maybe not so much for you to argue badly about Lord of the Rings.
Actually, it
but...
helped me because I haven't seen Lord of the Rings in a while.
Oh, okay.
To like to remember.
You
specifics.
guys brought it.
Yeah.
But since we're almost at an hour and a half, I think
Yeah.
we're gonna wrap
Very
this
good.
up. So it was a lot of fun, and thank you again for hosting
Thanks.
and judging this.
Pitch your projects one more time.
Oh yeah. Filmbeef and Death DVR. You can find them both on iTunes, any podcasting app, Stitcher, YouTube. There's a YouTube channel for Filmbeef as well. We're about to start The Leftover Season 2. That starts Sunday. And also finishing Fear the Walking Dead Season 1, which ends on Sunday. So it'll be a busy night. But yeah, look for that. And we're making some format changes to the Filmbeef podcast upcoming, coming soon. So look out for that too.
All right.
Check it out, guys.
Till next time, everyone. Cheers.